Welcome to the T4TCS podcast and YouTube channel. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, and provide your feedback in terms of ideas and topics that you believe are related to T4TCS. We would like to take the time to let our viewers and listeners know that the information discussed here is not to be interpreted as a clinical approach to trauma and psychology. T4TCS was designed to provide insightful information on topics related to post-traumatic growth, finding solutions to somatic healing through a mind and body connection that works for you. It also serves as a platform for members from various communities to learn about positive effects of a trauma-informed approach to self-defense and martial arts training. And now, take the time to enjoy the show.
Welcome back, everybody. We're episode 6 now, so thanks for watching. I've been watching the analytics, and things have been really good. The feedback's been pretty good, too. And we got some amazing news. We got approached by a wicked organization out west, the Alberta Community Crime Prevention Association. They got wind of some of the stuff that we were doing. I had a couple of discussions with them, and we're going to be going to one of their conferences in May next year. We're going to talk about some of the stuff that we do. They're very much interested, so there's going to be a crowd of law enforcement, first responders, educators, and so on there with the same ideas, and we'll be having a chat with them, so that's going to be awesome. And there's going to be able to stay tuned for a lot of like plug-ins in between that too. We're going to be doing a lot of small segment podcasts with some of the other participants and the speakers that are there, and doing some cross-training with them in between. So there's a lot of stuff that's coming down the pipe. We have a women's self-defense seminar that's coming up at the end of November on the 30th at the Taylor Jiu-Jitsu Dojo. So if you're interested, come on out. It's from a program that's designed, and there's nothing like it out there.
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing like it, and that's why we're going out west also. That brings me to the next piece, is that the reason why we started this was twofold, is to give people something that they don't have, and to also bring in the two things in terms of the trauma-informed awareness, and then bring in a different perspective from a practical standpoint in terms of the martial arts and self-defense. One of those things, though, that's very interesting and a lot of people don't talk about is this stuff that's going on in society. We talk about it, but it's something of a polarized subject, because you got people that will constantly argue about what will work and what won't, and it's frustrating sometimes. The other thing too is that there's certain places that you go and learn martial arts. Some people walk out of there with a false sense of security.
Absolutely, yeah.
And when the proverbial fecal matter hits the oscillator, or the shit hits the fan, I'll say it because we've sworn on the podcast before.
Sorry.
No, we've all done it. They just don't know what to do. And so our program helps identify those responses and helps people regulate throughout that. And we're not going to give too much away, but why I want to talk about what we're talking about tonight is because we're hearing a ton of stuff on the news now, and more so than ever. And this is a plug-in for media and how it sensationalizes some of this stuff too. The carjackings, the stabbings, the unprovoked attacks. Today there was a road rage incident in Pickering where a firearm was involved. Self-defense training is good. We've known that for a long time. Like, it's a good thing for people to do to let off some steam. Sometimes people leave there, like I said, with the false sense of security, and we all know that, thinking that they can defend themselves against absolutely everything. right? And I
Yeah.
don't know if you guys have met those people in your
100%.
in your time training.
Yep.
And that usually happens when like these self-defense programs that kind of is like one glove fits all. You do this, and you will escape.
Yeah, this is the one move for the knife
Yes.
defense that's going
And
to
just
save your life,
the
right?
minute you hear that, you just like, oh shit,
Yeah.
because it's situational, and size does matter. Sometimes when someone is small and you go against someone big, certain things are just not gonna work. It doesn't matter how much you try. So when someone tells you this will work for everybody, red flag.
And what about yourself? You almost jumped out of your skin there when I said that.
So the biggest thing, observation, and that not bothers me, but I think is a problem in the industry is it's like everybody goes to these things and right away they're learning, you know, how to defend against, the common attacks, right? The problem is like, why have you gotten to that point? I don't think there's enough emphasis on the training of preventing yourself from being attacked. Now that's not to say you can help that, because sometimes you can't.
Yeah.
But it's like there are a lot of indicators, there are a lot of flags, there are a lot of things that happen prior to an assault. Your biggest defense are two things. Number one, your ability to be aware of your surroundings and yourself and reading a room or people reading.
Yep.
That's number one. That in itself will get you away and out of a lot of bullshit.
Probably
a lot.
most of bullshit.
A lot.
Yeah.
Or really, honestly and truly, a lot. And number two, be in shape. Be physically fit.
Yeah, there's that. There's not, yeah, because even just training, sparring, right? You realize how much, just a tiny bit of sparring, how much energy it takes and how much you're sweating when
everybody
you're
always talks about the Nike defense. Well, if somebody pulls a gun or sorry, a knife, I'm just going to run. Yeah, but what if they run after you?
Yeah.
And they're faster.
Yeah. And what happens if they catch up? Are you now going to be able to do the techniques? Because that's the other misconception. When it comes to edge weapon or even impact weapon, but edge weapon is the more, dangerous one, I think, is, in a way, the reason why I say that is because most edge weapons are small, and one cut in a proper place and you're bleeding out. You get hit with something like an impact weapon, yes, you can get killed, but your body will take the damage. You could recover over time. You could do therapy. You could have surgery. You could, get a plate. But one slash, one cut to a femoral artery, and that's it.
or even just blocking the wrong way. Somebody cuts you across
Yeah.
here, like
So
you're bleeding
that's
out.
why I say the level of danger is greater. But running away, learning the knife defense, that stuff, the trapping the knife and this and that, and trying to control the weapon hand, and that's all great, but that is meant for you to understand that is your last ditch effort.
Yeah.
And there are some good techniques out there, but even the good techniques sometimes are taught in shitty context.
Yes.
Like the way I look at it is there's three ways to look at a knife attack. Number one is somebody shows it to you and they're intimidating you with it, and they're in a position that they might slash or hack you.
Yep.
Second is fixed position. They have it on you. They want something from you or you. They want to take you somewhere, but it's on you. And lastly is you just get stabbed.
Yeah.
And now you got to react. Those are three main areas. So how do you deal with that? Because like a lot of stuff I see is, the guy goes to stab. Well, what if you don't see the stab? What if the knife's in his pocket? He walks up to you and stabs you while it's in his sweater pocket, and then he cleans it and puts it away and he walks away. Your defense is also, how do I use my shirt as a tourniquet? What do I do for help? Like, there's so much that goes with it that it's not offered. And, when it's hyper-focused on just this technique or this technique, I mean, some of it is honestly, it is good, but it's like you're touching like this much on a hand.
Yeah, and that's where that false sense of security comes from, right? Because people walk out of there, get graded to a higher belt or in a different rank or whatever art that they're learning, and that specific rank is where they learn the knife defense, and then they walk out of there. And it's like, I just learned the best knife defense stuff out there, and surprise, surprise, when something happens, it's completely different. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't do a straight lunge at me. What do I do?
Yeah,
Right.
you're right. You're right.
So I think it's very important to address, like, first of all, like you said, the situation awareness stuff. And if you can put yourself in a situation where, or avoid that event completely, and all of the leading indicators that are, presenting themselves, and be aware of them, and just get yourself out of that position. Like, don't put yourself there. So somebody's following you around, all this other stuff. Like, why be confrontational, right? Again, if you don't have to, try not to, but sometimes you can't help it, and you're put in that position. But if you're there and you have that false sense of security, and you don't have the right training, then being in that position with the ego, the false sense of security, you're in a worse spot, I think, in my mind,
Yeah.
than you would have been had you had not had any training at all.
100%.
Because if you don't have training, what are you going to do? You just want to get out of there.
Yeah, but
When you have training, your ego
Yeah.
gets in the way.
going
right?
back to what Mark said, be in shape. You can know all the proper techniques, but if the struggle goes for a little longer than you anticipated, all of a sudden you gassed, and it doesn't matter that you actually know what to do, because you actually can't perform it because you're exhausted.
Yeah.
Right. So I think being in shape it's extremely important, because even stuff like when you're in shape, everything works better. Your reaction time is going to be better. You know what I mean? Little things, even just strength wise, holding someone in a certain position.
Yeah.
Like everything is just better when you are in shape, and people don't get that. Yeah, technique is everything.
No. Not always.
No, it's not. Being physically fit is a huge advantage. I mean, I've seen, like in the ring, fighters that are not as good but in way better shape. They'll just outlast the better fighter. They'll take those first hits, and then when the better guy, runs out of steam, they throw everything but kitchen sink at him. It looks ugly.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They're winning.
Yeah, I've seen that in kickboxing matches too, where you see that the person who looks and is crisp is a clean fighter, and I saw that years ago. Great, they won a couple of rounds, and then they progressed through the tournament, and they got to it, and that other person just happened to, they weren't as good.
That's a very common thing.
They weren't as
Yeah.
good. They just happened to be, they had their better cardio.
Yeah.
They were really crisp in terms of their the defensive maneuvering at, like, parrying and slipping and stuff like that. And they weighed the other guy. They outlasted him, and they gassed him out. And it took a few key shots, and they were finished. So, but like applying that to the street, it's huge, right?
Absolutely.
Because like you said, I could run, but for how long?
But also,
and then if they catch up to you, can you fight them off now?
Exactly. Am I
because now
gassed
you
after
ran,
That's what I'm saying.
you're already tired. And second thing, what people don't understand is if you're out of shape and you have an adrenaline dump, you're done in like under 10 seconds.
I mean, we just had a student fight, and her dump hit her. And,
Exactly.
I mean, she caught her. She's starting to catch her second wind, right? But like, that was a lesson for her. She's like, whoa, I didn't realize. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Now imagine, she knew where she was going to be that day. She knew what she was going to do that day. She had all time to prepare for it. You don't have that time, man. You could be, that's the problem. And this is the other misconception, right? It doesn't matter what you learn. It doesn't matter how good you are. It really doesn't matter. If you get caught off guard, by surprise, maybe your knee hurts and you're limping, maybe you're getting over a cold, maybe you had a fight with your spouse, and your mind is your mind is somewhere else, and that person catches you blindsided, the chances of you coming back from that are not very good unless you are conditioned to training under that kind of pressure. The best way you can get better at self-defense is put yourself in shit positions.
Yep.
And see how long you can survive. And hopefully that time that you can get yourself into a position where you can get away or neutralize, that time gets less and less and less through your training. You have to fail. for you to be successful in the gym. When you train to be successful in the gym for self-defense, you're going to train to fail in real life. If you train to fail in self-defense, you will have some success in real life because you're learning to overcome that mindset of like, I'm losing, I need to survive, That is learning to train under severe stress. That's the state you will be functioning in a real scenario. And if you're comfortable with that, that's when you'll be able to perform because you've been there.
Yeah. And that's like, there's certain aspects and certain units in law enforcement, military and stuff like that they just constantly dry drill this stuff all the time, and then they get into scenarios. It's pressure tested, back to the drawing board. Like it's non-stop. And yeah, they're trained to react. But guess what? The majority of the population is not doing that.
No, 100%.
And so we don't go into knife defense in, like I said, at a specific grading level and then become John Wick or Ong Bak or whoever the best person is in terms of handling a knife or a weapon. It's just not the way that it works. Where I want to transition right now is, this is all great to learn this stuff. It's important to learn it. What happens after? And this is why I'm saying the plug-in for the media, and we need to be careful. We should be being careful when we're talking about this stuff, because some of these people get empowered with the sensationalization of the violence. And don't get me wrong, people that are ready to take up arms and protect people and use focused violence and controlled aggression to protect innocent people, there's a place for that. It's been around for a long time. That's what they've been doing. And we need that. We need that security in society. That's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's part of one of those fundamental pieces. What I'm talking about is the fight that happens after the violence is over. We talk about these scenarios, we hear about it, and one thing that really, that I think about and I'm very aware of, when I'm in the vehicle with my family, and it doesn't matter what station you listen to now, they're talking about these assaults. Or they're talking about somebody getting stabbed. They're talking about somebody getting shot or a road rage incident. My kid's listening to that. My kid hears that. Then they start asking me, what is that? What is it? What's a carjacking?
Yep.
Right? What's a road rage incident? Well, I'm honest with my kid. I want to explain that. But now what does that do? Just me explaining that puts fear into my kid. What if that happens to us?
Yeah.
What are you going to do? What can you do, Daddy? Right? What am I supposed to do? I hope that never happens. So now the mind goes racing. So now let's imagine an actual family in that predicament. Right? We have, and there's tons of that have been in that situation. Carjacking. We've seen videos on it in the news that happened here, all over the world. Somebody pumping gas. Kids in the car. Somebody comes in and wants to carjack them. What happens? Now you watch my mom and dad defend against that person and possibly lose their lives. And some of them get injured, and the kid's in the back seat while it's happening.
Yeah.
Right? Just because that fight is over, physically, that family's fighting with that moment for the rest of their lives. Right? The child is living with that trauma. The family is living with that trauma. How to repair it. So
It's also important to see from which position you're looking at.
yeah.
Whether, for example, the assault happened that your family members got assaulted or your family member assaulted somebody. Because I think there's a big difference where, the family gets assaulted. That attacker, intruder is gone. But if, for example, your dad assaults somebody, that man is in your household every day. You see him every day. So that fear is still there because now you have it, oh, well, what if he snaps at me?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I think that's potentially a much more dangerous trauma because it's ongoing, because that person is within like your household.
Yep.
And if it doesn't get addressed and treated, that potentially has bigger damage than someone who assaulted, but now it's gone. That person is
Yeah.
no longer in the picture except in the memory.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then here's the other side of things. What if, the mom or the dad, the family was assaulted, they happened to get out, but that child also in the back seat or wherever during that was witness to that defense, but that defense resulted in the perpetrator actually being killed in front
Yeah.
of their kid,
Absolutely.
or grievous bodily harm is caused, and it's a brutal thing, right? That same image is going to come into play, right? Yeah, okay, they defended me against, a bad person. That's there, but then there's also the thought of, I didn't know that person was capable of doing what they just did,
Yeah.
right? It's a shock to the system. It's an intense blow to the psyche, and the mind doesn't know what to do with
Especially
it.
for a child that really
For
doesn't
sure.
comprehend certain things
Right?
yet.
Like, the core values are built up in us from the time we're born, and some of the fundamental core values and our beliefs in the system and what we see, and how we understand the world is from the time we're born till the age of 7. Those strong fundamentals are
Yeah.
there. Those can slightly be changed as we go along, but the base and the foundation is there. So when you have that intense blow to that psyche and that shattered assumption about how the world works in front of you, that's huge, right? I don't know about you guys. I witnessed it I witnessed it when I was younger, right? Like in extreme stuff. And I was unfortunately, for me, I was one of the ones where the hands were put on me, right? And it shattered, it does just that. That's the term that they use. It shatters your assumption and beliefs on that person and then how the world actually functions. So, the message out here, that I want to talk about is that a trauma-informed approach to reporting this stuff is crucial, but also to those that are providing martial arts and self-defense programs, really, we should we're doing a great job, and we have done a great job, and there's some great schools out there that are providing people an awesome outlet to get to be somewhere and not be part of something negative, right? But there's more we can do.
Yeah.
Right? There's more that places and dojos and teaching facilities can do to help out and really bring that home and understand that maybe we should focus on, the situation awareness stuff, the getting away from it first, right? Not putting ourselves in that position, because the trauma that lasts after the fact
Can change who you are.
it changes who you drastically.
I remember being a child, and my family. I'm the youngest of 10, and I have 4 brothers and my father, and all of my brothers except for one are alphas, including myself. That kind of personality. Some a little bit more than others. And so violence and fighting was normal.
Yeah.
It just happened. It was not uncommon for a Christmas family over for Christmas, the house full of people, somebody would get into a fight. It's just what it was.
Yeah.
But I remember, my brother, one of my brothers was always really nice to me, and because of the age, I only caught him living with us for a short while, but I had always known him to be like a guy's guy, but he was always nice to me. He'd take me to the park. He would let me read his Conan magazines, and I had this perception of my brother that I knew he was tough, but I never had to see it. And then one day my brother got into a physical altercation across the street, and it did scare me. I remember being a kid and being like, because you don't see that, you might see some shoving and stuff like that in the family, but when it's real,
Yeah.
and there's blood and there's teeth are on the floor, and the sounds.
Yeah, we were talking about that the other day, right?
Yeah.
There's certain sounds, they sound
Yeah.
rocks just kind of smacking together.
So I remember, because I was playing on my veranda, I was playing with my He-Mans, and then I just remember my brother flying the screen door open, jog across the street up into the guy's property. I remember seeing them talk, and then I played with my toys, and I just remember hearing, and then screams, and it was just feeding.
Mm.
And I remember that, and I remember like it was like I can remember that, but I can't remember a lot of things from childhood, but I remember those things. And so what it did to me was like, I still love my brother, and I was like very much happy to see him, but when he started to get agitated or annoyed, I would leave the room when I was really young, because like that might happen.
Yeah.
Right? And then even if it wasn't going to happen to me, I was just like, I would make space in case it did happen. So that's my own personal experience. And like, and that wasn't even that bad of a, compared to like some really extreme, like Eric's scenario that he pointed out, where like somebody being unalived, you know what I mean? Or grievous bodily harm. Like, that's why I'm very, very careful where I take my kids.
Yep.
And again, it comes down to the situational awareness thing, because if I'm somewhere and somebody's pushing my buttons in such a way that if it wasn't with them, I would be like, I would say something or confront them, right? I will do that double take if my wife or my kids are with me, because it's like at this point it's like I need to ensure their safety, and I need to make sure that, because if I engage with one person, who's to say there's not another?
Yeah. And that's the other thing, right? Like they could just be luring you in. Yeah. But you made a good point too, is like, what if it's the one at home? Right?
Yeah.
What if it's the dad?
Yeah.
And that's tough on kids. And that's, domestic violence, for example, is something that is huge out there too, right? So it leaves a psychological imprint on people for sure, and it affects them, and then you start to look at people different ways. I know for me, it always made me hyper aware of how people were talking to each other. For sure, when I heard people engaging in conversation and it sounded like it was getting away from the normal tone, I was very, very, very aware. Like, very aware. And I began to, like, tune into and almost predict if it was going to get escalated at a young age. It sounds weird, but I was able to do that. And so I knew when to stick around and when it was time for me to walk away. And it brings me back, actually. So my daughter was probably only like 2, maybe. She was walking at the time, so, but barely. And I picked her up from daycare, and then I went to, she loved we just go certain places sometimes. She didn't want to go right home. So we'd go and just sit and have ice cream somewhere or whatever it was. And I remember walking into a plaza, and then I was holding her hand, and we were walking across, and we were going to go to, where were we going to go? I think it was for ice cream. And there's somebody had his pants down to his knees and stuff like that, walking, and he's trying to get my attention. And it wasn't in a positive way. So I was just ignoring him. And my daughter's with me too, right? So, and my ego's not going to get in the way, but I was ignoring him, and I just wanted to continue going on my way. But he started to get very belligerent, call me a clown, all this other stuff, really trying to get to me. And I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to go to this place. He's going to watch me walk in. And if he really wants something out of this, then I don't want this to become something that she's going to witness or be part of, or I just don't want it to hurt anybody, right? And so we went back to the car, and then my daughter's now like, wait a minute, I thought we were going for ice cream. And now we can't go. And I have to explain to like somebody who's not even 2 why we can't.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that bugs her. But not only that is, it shattered her assumption, and I had to leave because I just didn't want anything to happen.
But that's still a better choice.
And nothing physical happened though.
Which is great.
Right? But it's still something that she remembers, even, believe it or not, she was like under 2. She still remembers to this day.
But it's probably not really a traumatic memory.
Not, but it was something that made her question.
Yeah, but why does she remember it? That's the
other thing, right? So it was a significant thing that did happen, right? So there's certain things that we as parents, or even just people in general, we need to be aware of it. And the other thing too is that do my kids need to really be around if something's about to happen? I started thinking about that a long time ago. I was like, yeah, my ego can say I'm going to engage, but what's really going to come out of it,
Well,
right? Somebody's going to get hurt. I don't know if it's going to be
trauma,
me.
police problems, just
There's all
many
kinds,
things that can happen
right?
that are none of them good. None of
That's
them
the other
good.
thing too. So like after you have, let's say you have that confrontation, but the cops get called now. Now you come down off your adrenaline dump, and now you're like, oh no, I'm in legal problems now.
Yep.
Maybe you went
That's
to jail.
also gonna. And now your kid sees you getting arrested and says, "Daddy bad."
Yeah. And what if daddy's gonna be gone for the next 5 years?
There's so much.
Right?
There's so
Don't
much.
know, right? And there's a lot of the unfortunate situations that regardless of you can even argue self-defense, that sometimes it doesn't work out your way. So
Yeah. Apparently, there's such thing as too much self-defense.
well, there's levels of we can get into that. That's a whole other topic that we can talk
Yeah.
about in terms of
And but it's very tricky because these lines are very blurry.
You have to be able to articulate it.
You know what I mean?
there's articulation of it, there's case law understanding, having somebody,
Yeah.
but
But then you might have a couple of unreliable witnesses and stuff like that, and you know how it is. Witnesses are not the best way of
Well-
like getting information.
I'll share a story.
traditionally they're not like
Exactly. So you might have followed everything to the T, but then the witnesses remember different, and then
well, their recalls, and again,
Yeah.
we talk about that a little bit in the way that our program is designed in terms of awareness and recall and stuff like that. Even when I was doing interview training, the style of interviewing that I do, the peace stuff, it's heavy into the psychology research. It's not a pseudoscience where people learn to detect deception and all this other stuff. Ours is based in enhanced cognitive interviewing, and understanding memory and recall, and understanding that it is flawed,
yeah,
right? So you can get what you get. It's the best to what they can recall, but it also understanding that it's not always the most reliable information that you're going to get. Sadly, sometimes that could really derail
Yeah.
a case that's in your favor.
Yeah.
Right? Even when you did everything with the best of intentions,
Yeah.
for the right reasons.
So that's my fear. That's why, honestly, I'll apologize 10 times. Say, okay, yeah, I'm the pussy, whatever. I don't care. I don't have the ego because the things that are gonna come out of it, nothing good. Like literally nothing good.
No.
And this guy calling me whatever, I don't care. I'm never gonna see him again. Who cares? So he has this ego trip. Honey, I told this guy this and this, and just like run away. He has a story for his life. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, good for you.
Good for you, buddy, right?
Yeah.
But I save myself so many problems. And that's worth everything in the world,
Yeah.
honestly.
What
So
was
what's your story?
We were well in sync on that one.
So I was driving, my buddy Stu was in the car. I was like 20 years old, 21 years old. And I'm driving my car, it was my first car. And I'm making a left on Archdeacon onto Vauden. And as I'm making a left, like the sun's coming down. So when the sun hits your windshield and you get that
You get that glare, yeah.
Yeah.
So that happens as this girl who's delivering newspapers cuts quickly across the street. And I remember I'm driving, I wait, I'm making a left, I'm not driving fast at all, the glare hits. The time it takes me to put the visor down, the glare stops, I see this kid in front of my car. I slammed the brakes so hard. And what happened was like the car didn't hit her, but like the car stopped just before her that she put her hands on the hood. But then the car brakes and does this.
Yep.
So she does that, and then as the car goes back, she just falls to her bum. And I'm like, oh man, I'm having a heart attack here. I'm like, I just killed this kid. Important note, my windshield had a crack in it. Okay. So I get out of the car and I tell my friend Stuart, like, get in the driver's seat, pull the car over. I'm gonna help this girl off the ground and over, right? So are you okay? Is anything hurt? She's like, no, I'm fine. I'm like, I'm just scared. I'm like, okay, can you get up? Can you move? So I pick her up. I bring her off the road. I sit on the grass. I pick up her newspapers. I'm gonna bring her back. I'm like, is anything broken? Are you hurt? Da da da. I said, where do you live? She's like, I only live right there. So I said, okay, I'm gonna go knock on your dad's door. So I went, knocked on the father's door. I was just fully expecting a swing. So and the guy was very nice, calm, came, They called the cops. Somebody had called the cops, so we stuck around.
Yep.
So I'm standing there waiting for the cops. And while I'm standing there, this lady is telling another person who just came, like, what happened. She's like, oh, I saw the whole thing. This guy sped through the light and he smoked this kid. And she went up and look, his windshield's cracked. And I'm like, really? She's like, yeah. I'm like, are you serious? She's like, yeah, I saw the whole thing. I'm like, funny, it looked fucking different from the inside, bitch.
Yee.
And she just looked at me. I'm like, and I was like, at that moment, I was so like fearful for what was gonna happen to me now. But at the same time, I was like, why are you lying? And this other lady, luckily, she's like, I saw the whole thing, sweetheart. You helped her. I'm like, can you please stick around for the cop? She's like, absolutely. I said, thank you so much. She spoke to the father and everything like that. So anything, long story short, I still got a ticket. They gave me a ticket for unsafe turn. Because after the cop was talked to by everybody, he's like, we're still going to give you a ticket because it happened.
Yeah.
But from what everybody told me, from how the girls is and everything like that, this is all it is. But anyway, I say that to say this. Any time now, I'm crossing the street and I get a glare, like it affects my driving.
Yep.
Like to the point where I almost caused an accident because the person behind me, because I would take a sudden stop, or if I see somebody crossing the street, I would get this like anxiety. And it's like, it's a small little bit of trauma, but that's in because it's like, number one, it was the girl's face. I couldn't sleep for like a week, by the way. Like every time I go to sleep, I would just see that girl's face, and like that whole like moment of like. But at the same time, it was like, man, like nobody will believe me. People are out there are just gonna straight lie and it can get you into trouble. So it's like you get this like sense of uncertainty, anxiety, and she didn't even get hurt. Now I can only imagine. You know, what if I killed that girl?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that was the thing. Like when I experienced what I experienced, just because the girl got scared, like the visual that I had in my mind for sleeping. You know, and I got another guy I worked with. His name was Joe. He lost his leg at work. There was this guy at work. He would joke around. He'd come out of the office, very quirky guy, and he would like make funny sounds and like loud noises and stuff. And we thought that was him, fucking around. Meanwhile, it was a guy screaming whose leg was caught in steel. And it took forever for the ambulance to get there. He passed in, pass out, pass in, pass out. The guy lost his leg. And so like when I hear even my kids scream downstairs and they get startled,
Yeah.
it brings me back to that. Like I can even smell the steel.
Yeah, there's certain things they will burn. That will be it'll be like an imprint in your mind, right? There's some of them for me as well. But that brings me, that's a good point that you made in terms of the witnesses too, and then also talking about your buddy or that guy at work doing those, being funny and stuff like that. But then when the time came, you were used to something, and it brings me back to some of the stuff that you study in the psychology side of things, and it's the bystander effect, right? And there was a very tragic case, and there's one of the blogs, so we've caught up on quite a few blogs, so feel free to read those.
They're great.
Thank you. One of the ones I talk about the bystander effect in it, and a tragic incident in New York City. An individual was getting beaten to death and murdered, and
That's the one on the subway.
no, it wasn't in the subway. It was basically in a park, like in the middle of the street. There's suburbs, like they're in a complex area, and nobody called the cops because there was an assumption that somebody must have called them already. Also, it was in an area where it wasn't uncommon to hear the loud screams and the altercations. So this poor person is, suffered a tragic death as a result of nobody doing anything.
So I got a better one for you.
And then, but that's kind of what our society is right now, right? It's gone that way because instead of people helping someone, first of all, we're afraid of what's going to happen. We just talked about it. If I step in and help somebody, what really is going to happen to me if it doesn't go my way in a fight, right? What if somebody's getting beaten? Now, there are certain parts of the criminal code that allow and give somebody that level of authority to help somebody if we catch somebody being beaten up to the point where we believe grievous bodily harm or death is going to be caused.
Still the rest.
I personally, trust me, if I see something like that happen, I will do my reasonable best if I'm in a position to do so to help a person. But not everybody does. What do? The phone comes out. The fucking phone comes out of their hands or out of their pockets, and they're filming it.
That's the one I have for you, yeah.
Instead of helping.
Yeah.
So it's not just the bystander effect. It's now, oh, this will get a ton of likes on social media.
Yeah.
What hashtag am I attached to this one? How many times can I repost this?
So sick.
Right? And I'm going to give you a 5-second clip of what happened without knowing what happened beforehand that led to the physical altercation. Right? That's all that it's incredibly misleading. So that's just the point I wanted to make. Like, you brought up two things that made me think of the bystander effect and the desensitization to the situations.
Yeah.
But also, that sped up a couple of decades, and people, instead of wanting to help someone, I'm gonna film it instead.
That's the one I believe it was in New York. The guy was getting stabbed to death, like on a subway station.
Right.
And people were just filming.
But that happens in schoolyards, right? We see it but people
it's disgusting.
Beating people up, bullies, people beating people up on schoolyards and filming it.
And can you imagine that effect on that kid? Because that kid just got beat up. And back in the day, that would be kind of end of it. People would just talk about it, but nobody see it. Now it's for everybody to see in the entire world.
It becomes a meme.
Yeah.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, that kid sees it everywhere for weeks, months.
Life.
Sometimes maybe even, forgets about it. And then like 5 years later, it resurfaces because someone found it and it becomes popular again.
Yeah. And then again, that shatters their assumptions on the way society should operate.
Yeah.
In a democratic world where just things should happen and that those people should be reprimanded for it. But no, they get sensationalized because of it.
Yeah.
So that it becomes a norm. It's okay to do this.
Well, now it goes even further. They have these like stupid YouTubers that will like pick fights with people in the ghetto, where it's like
it's a good. Yeah. Have you seen the ones in Russia?
Yeah, and sometimes they get hurt.
They get shot. They get killed.
Because like they think they can just go and I'm going to do this for likes. Well, they're messing with the wrong people.
Yeah.
These people live in a rough neighborhood and they don't take shit. They don't give a shit.
Yeah, and not that we condone that kind of stuff.
No,
but
no, of course.
But yeah, you're right. And people even silly doing it in gyms, right? They got their mics and they're like, you natty or not or whatever, or they start just teasing them about stuff. And you see people, it's like, are you serious right now, man? Do you know who you're messing around with? And you see actually people start to go after them. We're upside down.
Oh, yeah.
We're 100% upside down. And people don't understand how that happened. Part of that is, how do I put this? Part of that is not paying attention to first of all, what has been happening to people in the past few generations in terms of, again, the desensitization and not addressing the trauma.
Yeah.
Because if we come from a household like where there's intense violence or we've experienced war, terrorism, have been embedded in countries where this is a normal thing, and then reintegrated into another social norm that is not the same, well, one person thinks the violence is okay and the next one doesn't. Well, how does one react in conflict when there's a situation that's challenging to them? One will use words, the other one won't.
Yeah.
But they don't understand the in-between.
Yeah.
Right? The teaching process wasn't there. If you understand where I'm going, right? Like we can take people from box A, and I shouldn't even say that, but we could take people from this area here that are used to the violence, and this is how we handled conflict, and we take individuals that haven't used violence to handle conflict, and then you put them in a conflicting situation together where they have to handle the challenge, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah.
They're going to handle it the way that they know how to handle it and the way that they're
Exactly.
accustomed to handling it.
Yep.
And is that their fault? No.
It's their programming.
It's the way that that's what they're used to.
Yep.
How does this work? Like, how can we fix that? We need to fucking teach people. Right? We're just not taking the time to do it. And that's why I'm saying at the beginning, self-defense schools are great for everyone. But we need to teach more of, hey, there's a lot more that we can do other than just fight. And stop giving people a false sense of security and quit inflating people's egos.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think
Like-
the best way is to really any self-defense program, like Mark said in the beginning, starts with avoidance. If you can avoid the confrontation, you won.
Yeah.
100%, because it's literally the only way you will not really get any trauma.
Yeah.
Even the smallest altercation, to some people who are used to violence, because they train martial arts and stuff like that, literal altercation might be nothing. But for someone who never ever had any kind of training, was never exposed to any kind of even the smallest physical violence, because they never took any martial arts, even the smallest altercation, even if it's the verbal one, someone just yelling in their face could be so traumatic because they've never experienced that. So you have to kind of look at it that it doesn't matter on the level of altercation, because there are people there that have a very low tolerance, and there are people that have a very high tolerance.
Yeah.
And so whatever happens, it can have massive effects. So the best way of doing it to just be aware and avoid it before it even happens.
And even that being said, it's such a bitch trying to give people a sense of what self-defense can be like, because if you can get away, great. But that's under the assumption that you're out. What if it's in your home? What if it's a house invasion? How do you fight? How, you have to hold your ground. How do you protect yourself? Do you have a room in your house? Do you have a plan? Like my kids and my wife, if we hear something at night, we just lost one of our dogs, but the plan was one dog goes first, I follow that dog, the secondary dog stays in the chosen room with my wife and the kids. They know how to barricade it, and the room is chosen because the front window faces the street where they call for help. One's on the phone, one's outside yelling.
Yeah.
We have a plan. There are weapons in the house. There are some weapons that my wife will use. There are some weapons that I have on the way to another weapon. Okay? We have a plan. Most people don't have a plan.
Yeah.
Okay? The other thing is, what if you're in your car? Look, let's take a case in Brampton that happened, I say maybe 2, maybe 3 years ago. And if I find the clip, I'll send it to you if we can attach it to this pod on the YouTube.
Yeah, that'd be good.
But there was a gentleman, it was an Indian fellow, he was getting up to go to work. He got into his SUV, and while he was in his SUV, he got swarmed by a bunch of guys that broke the window with a tire iron and started hitting him. He got out of the car to fight them, which was the worst thing. Right? But see how his instinct, he wanted to escape and and feel mobile. But by getting himself out of the car, he took himself out of a place where he potentially could barricade himself.
And actually use the car as an escape.
As a weapon.
Right.
And as a weapon. Right? So it's like, okay, maybe that guy had a blue belt in jiu-jitsu or a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. Maybe that guy had a year of boxing. Maybe that guy, did some combatives training. Was any of that training taking place in a vehicle?
or were the pressure tests done with 20 people?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like this is the thing about self-defense. Like, guys, if you're watching this, you can never plan for how you're gonna get attacked. You can't. You can train some probable attacks, but the thing is you don't know how those attacks will become bestowed on you, or the day that it will happen. The best thing you can do is learn to read your environment, be able to make fast decisions under high stress, problem solve, have the tenacity and the cardio and physicality to endure or to cover, and then the techniques will come. That is part of it. But all those other things will make how your techniques get up deployed effectively.
Yep.
You need to spend time fighting against the wall. You need to do wall work.
Wall work, being
Clinch.
attacked while you're sitting down, trying to get up safely, all that stuff.
In the clinch, spend a lot of time in the clinch. Spend some time on the ground. You know, spend some time putting obstacles in the room and giving yourselves objective. Like this is why some of the stuff that we are going to be doing in our workshops, what makes it unique is that with the martial arts approach, we look at that.
Yeah.
We look at the legalities. We look at heightening our senses of awareness into the situation for where we are, where's our attacker, what's our exit strategy, do we need to exit, do we need to stay, are we protecting somebody, is there an improvised weapon, what's their improvised weapon, where's the phone, where's the fire extinguisher. This is incorporated in the defense and in the fight.
Yeah.
And on top of that, the expertise that Eric brings with understanding the physical responses our body's going through while it's happening, prior to, during, and after, and then the healing. So I believe what makes what we're doing so good is that we are covering a big spectrum, a more complete spectrum of what it means to actually defend yourself. Because there's so many different ways that can, and sometimes it's from a loved one. How do you defend yourself against a loved one? What happens when that person that you trust strikes you? How do you prepare for that? And some people don't want to fight back against the person because they love them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, you look at domestic violence and domestic abuse and stuff like that, in internal family systems being shattered and stuff. That's a whole other subject we could talk about too, right? But
So
you're
now
right.
what's your approach?
Yeah.
Can you be lethal?
Yeah.
And if you don't protect yourself, can it end up being lethal towards you?
Well, and the other thing too is that what if I do call law enforcement, but it's
And
not
they go
taken
lethal,
seriously?
or they go lethal on them?
Yeah, but
And
what
now
if
you
it's
have
not-
that guilt.
What's the other thing too is that what if it's not taken seriously, and then they say, well, okay, and then you're still stuck in the house with that person, right?
What's the aftermath like? Yeah.
What is that going to be like from a psychological perspective? And there's a ton of studies, and I've got some friends in law enforcement that work in those units, and it's not great stuff, right? So, yeah, we can talk about this subject for a long time. The big point I wanted to get across was we have to be cognizant of how we're teaching things and why we're teaching it, but we should really be expanding more and touching base on avoiding the fight to begin with and the situation awareness side of things.
If it can
I
be
think
helped.
if it can be, and then look at, okay, if I can't get away, what can I do now to deny them that opportunity and to put something in between me and them? Like you said, what is in this space? Is there a fire extinguisher? Where is the next exit? Am I in a restaurant? Where can I go from here?
Can I barricade myself?
Right? Can all of that stuff, right? And when I say fire extinguisher, it doesn't mean that you just have to use that as like a blunt weapon. Man, I mean that's a good smoke screen,
Hell yeah.
right? I'm pretty sure they're not going to expect somebody busting a fire extinguisher out and dispelling that thing in their face, right? So there's tons of things that we can think about, and a lot of things that part of our program is going to train people on in terms of the situation awareness piece, and then using our environment to the advantage. But again, like Mark was saying, is that we're also going to talk about here's what's happening, here's how we can deal with it, and how do we navigate the aftermath. And that's the big piece, right? So I don't know if there's anything else for you guys to add. That's cool.
I think that
but
also what I want to add, that this is not something that's fixed. This will be always expanding,
oh, for sure,
always evolving. We don't have like, oh, this is the Bible of self-defense and trauma training right here, and we shall never change it. No. This is going to be always stress tested.
Yes.
And always evolving, because simply, even on a seminar, someone's going to ask a question and you'd be like,
I never thought of that.
huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
New data or new case
Yeah,
study.
absolutely. Or a new experience in you have someone who had a traumatic experience that you never encountered. You know what I mean?
Got to figure that out. Yep.
Exactly. It goes to the database, it needs to get analyzed and solved.
And that's the beauty of it, is we're own test dummies. Right?
Absolutely.
And then with the people that we get to work with, and the amazing people that we're going to get to work with, we're going to pressure test this stuff, right? We're going to ask for feedback. We're going to use that data. So like we said a few episodes ago, is that just because we're helping develop this program, it doesn't mean we invented it. And the reason I say that is because it comes from other places. It's like all of the other martial arts. They originated from somewhere. Nobody owns BJJ. Nobody owns jiu-jitsu. Nobody owns or has a patent on karate, right? Yes, we're developing what we're developing, but we can't put a patent on it.
But it's the manner in which we catalog it.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's how we're going to approach it, how we're going to deliver it, and the way that we're testing it before we do it, and continuously testing it. So that's hence the word combative sciences. We're analyzing it constantly. So hopefully that was an informative podcast. I don't know, I like talking about it, but
if anybody out there has seen something traumatic, like whether they've witnessed violence, been in a violent altercation, seen a violent altercation, and they're willing to share it, put in the comments what it was like to go through that, how did it feel, how did it affect you, and how you've overcome it. I think it's good that we get the community involved and to speak, and if anybody out there has gone through it and they don't know how to deal with it, contact us, and there's great stuff to read. Eric's available.
Yep.
And that's what we want to do. That's our mission. So we want to build a community where we can talk to the viewer. And we're not just doing this for ourselves. I'm not doing this because I want to be popular on social media. I'm not doing this because I want to inflate my own. Like, I take this very seriously, and I do it because I love people. I love my community, and I want to protect myself. I want a better place for my daughters. And if I have a certain skill set that, not foolproof, but if I have a certain skill set that I think that I can give to somebody that could potentially save themselves or somebody else, or at least allow them to survive until help arrives, then I'd be a pretty selfish person not to be able or want to share that. So
yeah,
we want to get that feedback so that we can better serve you.
100%. And like you said, like if you don't feel comfortable commenting, we have a contact us part on our page that comes directly to us. So, and if you want it to be anonymous, that's fine, and we could just open it up in the chat. If you want to come to one of the seminars, we have one, like I said, on November 30th. More than welcome to sign up for that. And this one is a women's specific one that we have, but they're not all women specific. They're for everyone. It's just this is the one that we're holding at the end of November. So comments, questions, if you want to comment on the posts on YouTube or any of the social media stuff, go for it. If you don't feel like doing that, direct message myself or Mark or Jacob, or contact us through the website. I've even set up an appointment calendar in there too for free 30-minute consultations on stuff. So feel free, use whatever means you can, get in touch with us, let us know what you want to discuss if you want to, or if you're just looking for some resources. So, and like Mark said, we're not doing this. The legacy that we want to leave is that to leave at least a positive imprint in society. Really, that's what I'm looking at. Right?
100%.
So that's our goal, and if we can do it at least once, I mean, cool. Then we could.
Question is, how far are you willing to go?
Yeah, that's true. How far will you go? Right?
Yep.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. You see, I held some for the end, and you guys said
Sorry.
you wanted to. So cheers.
I know.
Jacob's got it.
We're working on it.
I needed it. I needed it today. Cheers, guys.